regular monthly meeting of Boston VR. We are one of the largest VR meetups in the world. We've been doing this since 2014. Thank Wayfair for hosting us here and feeding us. And thank you, Look On Media, for coming all the way here from Washington, D.C. They paid our membership dues to Meetup.com for the next 6 months. Absolutely essential. You can connect with us online through social media. We also have the Virtuality podcast. Do give that a listen. It's great fun. We're friends with Women in the Next Realities. So here's the link. I can give it to you afterward. Jerry is sitting here. He has t-shirts for sale, 15 bucks a piece. And he will also be recording tonight's talks. And when those are ready, he'll post them to our YouTube channel, and we'll put a link on the event page. So if you take out your cell phone, take pictures if you're interested, and please post them to the event page through meetup.com. This is our team, and we are looking for volunteers. We absolutely need help with marketing, partnerships, events, web and dev, and more events coming up. I tend to blaze along quickly. In chronological order, EdTech Meetup is October 8th on Tuesday. They're a very well-run group. Alan Foster can tell you all about them. October 16th at Berklee College of Music, we'll be having 3XR and the Immersive Tech Lab. 3XR is Mike Vesta's company. He actually worked at Wayfair, founded their XR group, and I believe his company is making, 3 assets for XR development. Berklee School of Music is doing a lot of interesting stuff. On the 19th will be the BostonVR's regular developer jam. We make VR all day long, and in the mornings, we're going to be having classes on Unity, Blender, things like that. Our old friend Danger Donahue will be teaching those. So we'll post more information on that. October 28th will be the XR and Learning Global Summit. Hakan, where are you? There he is in the back. Hakan is the organizer. He can tell you more about it. The one last year was fantastic. They're bringing together companies and consumers of XR for industrial training, which is our theme for tonight. And they're going to have a lot of demos, great talks. You can register with the BostonVR code. That'll give you $100 off. And then at 6 p.m., we're going to have a free after party. The BostonVR after party will be there in the same place as the conference. So please come join us, and Hakan is generously going to feed us pizza as well. Let's see. The Medical XR Hackathon, organized by Steve Max Patterson, it doesn't have a date set, but if you're interested in either making medically oriented XR, or you want to try it, or you want to use it, please let me know and I'll put you in touch with him. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Look On Media, our keynote speakers. Come on up. So I saw these guys at the VRX, the Immersive Enterprise Expo. I've been doing VR for 30 years. My PhD is in educational VR for training. It's a great tool. And this is the best time to be alive in the area. And Look On is doing some of the best work out there. So I was impressed with what I saw, and they're going to tell you more about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. Do we have another microphone here for Brian?
Yes, we have 4.
We have so many. All right, you get 3. Thank you. Okay.
This will be for questions. Oops, sorry.
Probably going to break this PowerPoint, so that's my strong suit. So we're Look On Media. We're from Baltimore, Maryland. We're really happy to be here. Thanks again so much for having us and hosting. This is totally awesome. We've already had some great people run through demos, and
thanks so much.
Is this not?
Should we switch out the questions, Mike?
This better? Yeah, much better. Dulcet tones, Brian Mahoney. So the overall theme, we wanted to go through a few different things. One would be some use cases for VR. One is going to be a specific use case that we've done and deployed to a client. Another one would be like how we kind of worked with that client and the best practices that we found in our experience with that. And then we'll end with what not to do or when VR is not necessarily a great use case. And then we'll just open it up for a bunch of questions. Yeah, cool. So let's do it. Okay. Virtual reality, we discovered, is incredibly valuable for a ton of different things, but specifically for physical tasks. The way that memory works that we've discovered is that if you're in a physical place, memory is tied very inherently to it. So if you can put somebody in a one-to-one environment where they're going to be training or doing something, they're going to retain that information up to 90% more. We've seen numbers anywhere between 70 and 90%, which is a pretty massive retention rate.
Yeah, Oculus just had their big conference, and one of the things they talked about surgery training is they did test subjects, people trained in VR, not in VR, and then how well they did going to a lab with minimal instruction. I think 83% did very well going into it. The people who trained in VR, the people who didn't train in VR, I think it was 0%.
0% is a very low percentage.
Yeah, without support, yeah.
It's very low. So again, one-to-one representation of the environment. We can create any of it because we're using the same technology to make video games. Brian's background is in video game technology. Mine is less so because I'm in the mobile space. Don't judge me. And so we're using the same tools and tech that are really engaging younger audiences now already. And now we can take that and apply it to vocational training, which is massive. And again, you're only limited by imagination. So that's really valuable for virtual reality. We'll go through some of these lists here. The increased retention is massive. Repetitive motion is really big. So doing something over and over again helps form those schemas in your brain. It's been described as your brain is like a snowy hill, and there's a sledding track going down it, and the more you sled down the same track, like the more you form those pathways, right? So virtual reality can really give you a good sled on that brain hill, which is great. So that ties into behavioral learning, especially for things like hospitals or anything where doing something in sequence is really important. Then you want your trainees to come out of that program knowing that sequence by heart, and it's just second nature to do it.
Yeah, and VR also gives them an opportunity to train over and over again, remotely, wherever they want, whenever they want, which is huge, especially we've talked to many people, trainees, who are saying, lunch breaks would be perfect. Like if I could just go in and practice over and over again, and then they're getting the results, it's actually working, and they're having fun while they do it.
Right. That's a lot of wins that you just talked about, which is very good for the industry and very good for the clients. On that same note, familiarizing the trainee with the environment is huge. We got a lot of feedback from the use case we're about to talk about in a second. Trainees coming back and just saying, just being there and being on site and being with the tools help me feel so much more comfortable that now when I go out into that environment, I feel better. I feel like more confident in what I'm doing, and that's huge.
Yeah, especially if it's, we talked to people working with teams, if it's a utility crew or something, and they're coming off of being a contractor or they're coming just straight up green. When they go out there, a lot of the times the people that are they're a little intimidated. They don't know if they're going to do the right things, but if they've done it before, that gives them confidence and know kind of what they're talking about when they get on site.
Definitely, confidence is good. We all like confidence. I wish I had more of it. Let's move on to the highly cost-effective or hazardous industries specifically. So this is where training for like gas leak training, anything that has to do with scenarios where there's a high probability of risk and injury, that's bad. So getting people into those training environments is really dangerous, and a lot of times a lot of that training takes place just in a classroom, and then they try to simulate those environments, but you can only simulate a dangerous environment so much because one, it's really hard to do that in the real world and really expensive.
And also dangerous.
And two, it's also really dangerous. So if you're trying to train somebody how to put out a fire, probably don't want to light a building on fire and be like, all right, put it out.
Yeah, or getting in a bucket and going under a tank, like and fixing a telephone pole or something like that. Like to simulate that, you'll go with a bucket to do it, but it'd be a lot easier. You could do it a few times in VR first.
Yes, exactly. So one, you can get that readiness. You can familiarize them with all the different scenarios that they can do. So another thing is that there's a kind of outliers, right? So everything kind of functions on a bell curve if you're going out into a hazardous industry for an event to happen. And so let's say the power goes out, like, 60 to 70% of the time, it's going to be just one thing that you go and you fix and you run into that over and over again. And everybody sees that and they train on that and they're comfortable with that. But sometimes they're going to get out into the field maybe 2 or 3 years into their career, and they're going to encounter an outlier scenario that is going to be really dangerous. And it's going to be something that they don't expect and they maybe were trained on like one day 3 years ago, but that's not going to do them any good at that time.
Yeah.
So if we can capture all of that data and make them train on those kind of outlier scenarios too, it's going to make them more prepared and they're going to retain that information when they come into open field.
Yeah, also people can have a tendency of we've heard stories of people kind of getting sloppy with safety equipment or sloppy with things like that, or just forgetful of, oh, I don't need to put on the mask, but 4 feet down, it could be toxic. And then stories of people getting sick or dying in those situations way more common than I thought before we started doing this stuff.
It has, and that's the striking part, is talking to these clients and being like, oh, that's a real thing that happened. Bummer. So we can fix that with the magic of VR. The other part of this is gauging and improving emergency reactions. So if there's like fight or flight, and then now we have freeze is the third component of this. And it turns out the vast majority of us just freeze whenever anything happens. Our brain doesn't know how to process it, so we just stand there and stare at it. So with VR, again, we can get people used to those reactions. We can put people in scenarios where something goes wrong. And if they freeze the first time, then the second time they might not, and the third time they might actually do the right thing. And they can practice over and over again. So if they do ever encounter it in the field, their reaction isn't to freeze, their reaction is to actually fix the problem.
No one froze so far by putting out the fire.
We're very proud of all of you so far. Everyone's been doing a very good job over there. Okay, so remote locations, yeah, this is huge. Travel costs, this is one of the first things that we ran into for training, especially for hazardous scenarios. Things like mining, things like offshore wind or green energy in general, anything that's in a remote location is really, really expensive to get people out to. Get your staff out to, and then your trainees out to, that's massively expensive. If you're taking clients out or investors out and run into that use case too, that's massively expensive. We do a lot of tours of facilities where people want to show off their amazing, like truss facility where it's this really dangerous manufacturing environment. Somebody wants to show it to clients. They would have to fly them in every single time to the facility to do so, which can be costly. So instead, we can create an immersive experience of that and then just send out headsets.
Yeah, which is also good for sales for them as well. Yeah.
Totally, it's great. VR is portable, and you can recreate any environment that you want. So not only can you do existing facilities, you can do facilities that you're imagining doing.
Yeah, like future concepts and actually visualizations of things you want to build, or we have a lot of that. It's like, wouldn't it be cool if we built this kind of crazy thing? And then it's like, all right, give us 2 weeks, and then they're like, oh, I'm in there now. It helps them sell. Like, yeah,
exactly. And he's not lying about the 2-week turnaround. That's the thing. So I think it's really important just to remember that, like going in and pitching to anybody, it's really helpful to have a prototype and something that clicks with them, with their industry. That's been incredibly useful for us, and VR is a perfect way to do that. So,
yeah, we started kind of like when we were getting into this field, we just kind of started prototyping a lot of different scenarios and things because, it's easy to talk about it, but if you have a wide variety of things to show, you always want somebody walking away with like, what if we did that? What if we did this? And like they just start churning. And once that happens, then you get really cool like they'll come back and be like, I have this idea, and then it's like, cool, let's make it.
Yep, that aha moment, you can really see it when they get out of the headset and like, we can do this, and this. And like, yes, we can in about 2 years' time. We do all that stuff, which is good. We want that. So this is a case study we did for Exelon. They're the biggest utility provider in the country. It's a gas leak detection, and this is kind of the reason that they chose to do it. So this actually happened in Philly a few months ago. This was a gas leak that went undetected and it took out this entire city block. And this happens with relative frequency.
Yeah.
Well, you guys know what happened in Lawrence, right?
We do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect case point of why this stuff.
Right. So this is shockingly common. So we went in there and we had this idea to go and we pitched to BGD, which is the local Exelon subsidiary in Baltimore. And we walked in there with this huge presentation, like ready to wow them. And the first 10 slides were just trying to illustrate the value proposition of VR. They're like, yeah, we know.
Yeah, we got it.
We got it.
Let's make it.
Let's go. We're like, okay, moving on. So we just blasted the slides, and then we started getting down to actually creating, which was really cool. So we kind of split it into 2 types of value propositions that we have discovered through working with these guys and the way that we kind of envisioned it in the first place. The first one is, and probably the most important one, is just improving trainee efficacy. So we want better trainees. We want them better, we want them faster. A huge part of this is like standardizing trainees across all of Exelon's subsidiaries. So that's huge. So if they have a gas leak problem in Baltimore or something explodes, they can bring people down from Philadelphia and they all know the same training. They've all been through the same thing, so they all know the same procedures.
Yeah, it seems like a big pain point has been each subsidiary kind of reinventing the wheel for how they do these things over and over again. So it's kind of hard to have that one-to-one overlap where an emergency situation happens or this. So that's why they really want to kind of figure out ways to standardize it. And that's kind of where us having a VR application was like, well, this could be a good way to unify. It's remote. They don't have to go on site. It's a good way to kind of like get everybody on the same page. So worst case scenarios, everybody kind of knows how to work with everybody's kind of tools and options.
Right, actually, so the next point, familiarizing all of them with the tools and the process, that's massively important. Doing things in order that we kind of hit on earlier is critically important, and it also it comes into things like emotion. So if you skip your PPE or you don't sign your job reform or something like that, you're out of compliance. And because utilities are federally regulated, that's a big deal. Just not only for safety of the community and the safety of the trainees, but also for the company, clearly. So the other part that we were able to do was randomize the leak locations and the scenario variables. And this one was really cool because it mixes up the training, right?
Yeah. They try to more simulate stuff because, you know, if they get used to picking the leak on one place, where's the real training in that? You know, it's just like, okay, I did it once, now I did it 100 times. If they have, you want them to learn the process of deduction to figure out where it's like the detective version of, okay, here are the options, what are the steps I go to? But if it's not random or if it's not kind of real world simulated, then it's not really that valuable after a few runs.
Exactly, we don't want it to just sit on the shelf, right? We want it to be able to be useful over and over again. The other part that we were able to do really well is start gathering quantitative data and accurately score those trainees running through the process. So we set up task blocks and we can get really intricate with it. And now with that, we can really increase that quantitative data so they can go and see where their scores need improving. Whereas before they're just kind of going through where they'll go out on site with somebody and they have a person that's there mentoring them, but all of their feedback is just that guy being like, well, yeah, I guess you did that, right? Like, good job.
They have setups like at their kind of like the training centers and things where it's like, okay, they built these like things that you can go repair. You can repair this like underground thing, or you can repair this, you know, meter. But again, there's no real way other than you did a good job and fill out a questionnaire or something at the end.
Yeah.
It's not behavioral based, so there's no way to actually see what they did or what they're doing. So it's kind of hard to track how effective that is other than word of mouth or just kind of questionnaire stuff.
Exactly. So quantifying all of that data is really, really important to scoring, and then also proving efficacy because we want to show that they're getting better over time and that the simulation is working. So if the company spent all this money on it, they want to know that, hey, average scores are going up. That's the goal. Hitting back on what you were talking earlier too, is all this has allowed us to increase the problem solving speed. So when the trainee actually gets out into the field, they're more capable and more prepared to find the leak faster. And that's what we want. We don't want them to take 2 or 3 years to learn all of the intricacies of finding a leak. We want them to go out there and feel comfortable and have the critical thinking skills necessary to locate it and fix it before an explosion happens.
And then because it's VR, it's kind of like fun by nature. We've noticed people are starting to get kind of competitive with each other. Like in these things, trying to like one up high scores and stuff. We're like, okay, well, we'll put a scoreboard in and why not?
Yeah, that's good. That's what we want. We want people to be engaged and keep doing it. And that's the thing, at least the last point, Marketplace, they practice over and over any time. So we hear that feedback all the time is, hey, can we just come in and do this? Do we need somebody present to run through the scenario and answer the VRs? No. You can just fire it up anytime you want and actually track that data so people can see, the organization can see, okay, trainee A went through this training simulation like 100 times and they're super into it. And that's great because then they can start making operational decisions.
Yeah.
To the next slide, Brian, are you excited? I'm excited. Okay, so this is the operations side of things. This is the more company-focused things. Better trainees in less time, that saves money. That's huge. The sad reality of VR right now is that it's really hard to sell clients unless you can prove some type of return on investment. It's just the reality of the business. We love doing passion projects. We also love to pay rent and eat food, sadly, and make a little bit of money to keep the lights on. So to get better clients, bigger clients invested in this type of technology, we need ways to measure return on investment, which is going to be massive for any pitch, right? So that's really important. The retaining new generation of workers is really important because the biggest population of the workforce right now is retiring. The baby boomer population is about to retire and they're taking with them 30, 40 years of institutional knowledge. And once that knowledge is gone, it's just lost. So we want to really capture that and put it into these scenarios and build it into these scenarios so that generational knowledge can get passed on to the next generation of trainee. And these generation of workers are growing up, they're comfortable with video games, they understand the input, and they're excited by VR, right?
Yeah, most of them are pretty well versed. You can kind of tell when they get in there, it's like, okay, what do I do with teleport? I already got it, like, you know.
Yeah, it's amazing to put somebody of like our age or a little bit older into VR and see them like get it and they'll pick it up eventually, and then we'll put like 8-year-olds in there and like, shut up, old man, I got this.
Every single
like I already found the leak. You're like, that's not even the leak scenario. So it's really, really cool to see the next generation just get it immediately, which is awesome.
Yeah, and there's also like really cool tools going forward. You know, if there's like some legend in the field somewhere, it's like, okay, once volume capture gets cheaper, we could capture that human and actually make them an instructor forever in VR and things like that. So there's a lot of future thinking things we do that can be really exciting.
Super cool and very valuable again on the operations side of things. The measuring that, keep hitting on the data point, that data point is huge. Being able to have actual numbers to look at and measure and show improvement in training is something that the organization can point to and say, hey, this program is working. So let's keep developing it. Let's keep working on it. And maybe on these parts that we need additional help with, let's go find the resources we need to make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, especially coming from traditional training, whether it's like clicking through online questionnaires or videos or things like that, it's really hard. Usually it's either, you know, people get a quiz at the end or you just know they completed it, but it's really hard to know beyond that one experience kind of what they take away from it. Exactly. But this is a way to do it over and kind of keep tracking that like progress and see how things go.
Yeah, and the longer they do it, the bigger body of information that they have, the bigger body of data that they can analyze. They can start doing comparative analytics between different groups and even different fields, which would be really useful. So again, the more data that we capture, the better scenarios that we're going to be able to build and the more operational decisions that the organization is going to make based off of that data that they've gathered, which is really cool. And then probably, you know, another super, super critical part of this is just the on-site safety, increasing that, decreasing accidents. So if a catastrophe happens, that's awful for the community, it's awful for anybody involved, and it's awful for the company as well.
Yeah.
So they want to avoid those things just as bad, if not more than we want.
Yeah, I mean, even just day-to-day stuff. Like for example, we have a safety portion in our utility training where you have to kind of put up cones around the truck and like kind of do that stuff first. At first, you're like, okay, you know, what's the big deal? Do it out of order or miss it. But so when we were kind of learning how to do this, we would bring our 360 cameras on site so we could actually go and follow them around for some days and kind of go watch the whole process. And when I was on site the second day, a car clipped the mirror right off the side of the truck. So if somebody was going in there, they would have creamed. Like, so and I was there for a few days. Like, how often does that kind of thing happen? So
yeah, we caught it on video. It's crazy because the streets are so incredibly narrow. It's unbelievable. Like, oh, those safety cones are very important. It turns out because people randomly drive like crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're both shocked by it. So working with client, these are some of the things that we found. This is pretty simple. I'll just distill this down. research, listen to the client, understand their pain points and the project goals. Having really clearly defined project goals, we think is critical. It's easy to get big ideas in VR, and we do it all the time. Wouldn't it be awesome if we did this? But if there's not a specific thing that you're trying to accomplish, it's going to be really hard to actually form that into a project. Yeah, totally.
They'll spend 2 years on one thing out of the gates. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So the second part of that, like Brian's talking about, start simple. So the clients are going to come in and they're going to get super excited and they're going to say, let's build this crazy huge thing. And then it's going to be your job to say, we love your idea, we love your enthusiasm. Let's do like 5% of that and see if it works. And let's start with one goal and then learn if we can work well together, learn the client's workflow, and see if we can actually do this project. See if it's a feasible project.
Yeah, because it's a process, all this stuff, especially VR is still evolving, inputs evolving, everything's changing. And then also we're learning how people are responding to this type of stuff. So if you start big in this huge giant thing, and then it doesn't work, it's a huge waste of everyone's time and money, and then it's just going to be dead on arrival at that point. As opposed to an ongoing thing, they keep iterating on, working, getting people QAing it, and then you can make it better and better and better for everybody as it goes on.
Exactly. So, I mean, this is the other thing too that we see a lot in the industry is there's a lot of cash grabbing happening right now. So there's a lot of big promises and then companies coming in and throwing big dollars at these established agencies that say, yeah, we can do VR for sure. And they outsource it and it comes back bad. And then they feel burned and everybody's sad. And then when we show up with our demo, like, hey, Jake, we made this, they're like, whatever, we are stupid and we don't like it. And we don't like you either. And then we have to fix it.
Like the 360 video is different. It's not the same.
It's not bad. Yeah, no, this thing's actually really cool. It works. Yeah, you can fix stuff in this one. So bad VR is bad for the industry. Yeah.
It kind of poisons the well for everybody. And it's just, it leads people in a direction that it shouldn't, that it's really not. Like,
yeah, the moral of the story there is do good VR for everyone. Do it for us, do it for you. Last part of this, super simple, learn, improve, expand, measure effectiveness, get feedback. Feedback is super important. Want to work with the subject matter experts in a huge, huge way and just iterate and iterate and iterate and then expand the platform as you see fit.
Yeah, and we've had, as much as we've learned about wind turbines or, fixing gas leaks and stuff, that's not our trade. So we've had multiple times where we built this demo and one group of people be like, this is perfect, this is what we want, but then we run a whole other group, and they're like, well, technically you missed this and it's different, so again, as many eyes on it as possible to make sure that it's just uniformly the way to go.
Definitely, yeah, you want it to solve their problem, and that's what we're trying to do. So, when is VR not the right fit? Clear value proposition. If the client doesn't see it, if you go in there and you have a very clear idea of what you want to do, but the client's not quite understanding it or doesn't quite understand VR or the industry or see a future in it, then it's probably not the right client or it's not the right time. They may need to wait and not be first movers and wait until somebody else in their field has done it and seen success, then they might feel more comfortable because you can point to that other thing as a case study. But if you go up and really try to get a client that doesn't see the value proposition, it's really hard to sell.
Yeah, there's a lot of, because VR is kind of a buzzword right now, and it's very popular. It's like, oh, it's new cutting edge. So people are doing it kind of to do it to some degree at times, and it's got to be a good fit for the subject, for what you're trying to do. Not everything translates perfectly to VR. You want to pick the right thing that'll work for it.
Yep, exactly. So again, no clear measurable goals for the project. That kind of ties into the previous point. Sometimes an augmented reality solution might make more sense than a virtual reality solution. That happens.
It happens, and we'll be very clear about that. Like, this sounds more like an AR thing than a VR thing. Just we want the best for the customer to get what they actually want out of it, as opposed to just spend a bunch of money on something that's cool to show off but doesn't really get them anywhere. It's not useful for much.
Totally, because again, we want recurring clients and we want happy clients that the product worked. So if we just sell them some VR solution that doesn't actually function the way they need it to, then we're doing bad, because we're also consulting with them. We're their advocate in a lot of ways, and we want to let them know when it's not the right fit.
Yeah, the awe and the magic of VR like that, it does fade. So at that point, you want something that can stand after that, that's actually practical and useful.
Totally. Another time not to use VR is when you can get the same result with a video or something else. So we've also been approached by people because VR is kind of a buzzword, like, hey, we're doing this conference and we're a computer software company and we want a VR simulation of someone at a desk, like on a computer. We're like, well, can you just take a desk and a computer? And we're like, yeah, that's not VR, man. Well, yeah, but it's actually real VR. So traditional media is going to give you a better outcome outcome and probably cost much less money and take less time, then do that. That's the better route. The clients can appreciate it in the end and hopefully come back with like a muffin basket or something.
Yeah, there's also a lot of client education that goes into that because it's still kind of hazy on like 360 video versus room scale versus, mobile VR. So kind of a lot of the times clients will be, oh, VR is like which, and trying to help them guide in the direction. It's like, okay, that's a good fit for like an Oculus Go type of scenario. This would be a good fit for PC, it's more involved, it's heavy duty. So just knowing which different use case, that kind of helps get clear what the vision is so you can kind of make sure everybody's building what they want.
Totally. And if there's not sufficient budget to do it right, don't do it. Or unless you want to really invest that like time capital of your own, but make sure that you do it right at that point. But yeah, if the client doesn't have the cash, then it's better to find somebody that has the budget to allow yourself to do it
So
right.
make sure you can make a decent product.
For sure. Cool. Good. All right. Q&A. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Or Wayfair things. Sorry, I broke it. We burn all our time.
No, we have 5 minutes for questions.
All right. That's great.
Yes, last.
Hi, your stuff looks great. I saw the video on the way here.
Thank you.
The gas leak detection training, was that something you made after you met with Exelon 4 months ago, or was that something you had prepared before and had them ready? Because that's like a AAA, experience.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah. So that process actually started back in 2017. And that's when we started ideating that. And we went to them with a proposal, and we didn't actually we had the wind demo over there built for them to try that out just to show proof of concept. And then that project has been going on for over a year.
Yeah, it took a while to figure out what it was going to be, so there's a lot of back and forth, but it's a better part of a year before we actually broke ground on making something. And then now, but again, we stuck to it. It's like, let's do a few month chunks and phases so that the whole thing is built like you were talking about before, phase and phase, so we can keep up the quality, but also make sure that it's working and really practical.
I had just one other quick question. For your data analytics, are you actually recording what someone is doing in the sim? Or are you just getting the high points like they've actually completed a task there? Or are you like literally kind of recording all their motions and seeing how, say, efficient that is or anything else?
Right, so we can do that level. The level that we have right now is just recording the high points, the task blocks that the company wants to do. But if we need to get that finite with it, we totally could. That granular with it, we could.
Yeah, for the clients we're working with so far, they're just looking for the bullet points of main stuff, and then we'll kind of flesh it out, get more and more detail as long as the core stuff's there first.
So we're lucky tonight to have the Vario VR1 here, and I don't think I need this. I don't think it's working. The headsets now have this amazing eye tracking capability. Particularly the VR1 has amazing accurate eye tracking. You got the Vive Pro Eye coming out now, and obviously that unlocks a lot of possibilities for training. What do you guys see with that, other than offering your clients just heat maps of where someone's been looking? What else can you infer? What else can you learn? And how can you improve the training process with it?
With eye tracking. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not really sure where they're going with it, because I know the eye tracking can fix a lot of the mixed reality stuff once they start getting past the modes and kind of having AR, VR, hybrid kind of like things. But for training with the eye tracking, I really don't know yet. Like, that's a really good question, because everything's been so physical, like pick up an object, physically do a task, like the concept of where you're looking, like you said, seeing what they're focusing on. It could get into social if you're getting detailed to the point where you're like interacting with your instructor and like seeing like how they, like if you're doing that kind of like situation.
Definitely. So part of that we've also worked with a little bit with Kennedy Krieger is eye tracking for adults with autism and tracking where their eyes are for that, because eye movement is a critical part of how teaching communication skills in that set. So I could see a lot of medical applications for eye tracking, or also design. So if you're designing something and you want to see how people are actually looking around your designed product or tool, you could use eye tracking to do that in VR.
Yeah, or also seeing if they're missing something and seeing it's like, okay, look at this like scene, what's wrong here, and if they keep not looking in the right areas or things like that. Like this is, yeah, just I don't know. Let's try experimenting. Like now I want to get hold of one of those things. Yeah.
Great presentation. Thank you very much. Do you have thoughts on or solutions for the training with multiple people inside VR at once? Sort of going forward with that.
Do like a multiplayer kind of like co-op experience. Yeah, there's been talk about doing that, and we have plans to kind of get that implemented. We've worked and been around other companies who are kind of playing that kind of stuff, and it's still a little tricky to get right, like to make a really smooth experience out of a lot of the co-op multiplayer we've seen. But there's no reason with the headset quality now that it can't be really good. So that'll get into team-based kind of like tasks. So instead of right now, you're just one person on the job, and there's like a few NPCs around. That's where everybody is the character. There's no NPCs, and then it's how you actually work as a team. So I can see that being a big part of it.
Do you value in the training aspect?
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. So measuring that'll be the big challenge, is measuring who's doing what and what task blocks they're completing and if that's actually part of what they're supposed to be doing. So scoring that will be an awesome challenge that we can't wait to solve.
And to see how people work well with each other if you're trying to put a specific group of people together and trying about that. But yeah, there's a lot of social aspects that can be really useful.
Actually, on that topic, the software here, demoed by iMotions, does biometric tracking, eye tracking, and that sort of thing. So,
That's awesome. Yeah.
Oh,
That's right, I think I can speak up.
okay.
My question's on the medical device training, medical training, for example, with an endoscope. Is it possible to have the controller be the actual medical device and have the experience be virtual reality and have that recorded? So the physician or the user is able to practice with the actual device?
Yes, so you can do that. You can map controls to an actual device. So we've seen that done with like welding, with painting, where they use very specific tools. So you could do it with that.
Or remote surgery, training with VR, things like that.
Right. The issue you're going to run into there is going to be haptic feedback. So if you're doing that in real life, you're actually getting a type of feedback or resistance, I would imagine. So in VR, you're not going to get that with the kind of off-the-shelf solutions that we have right now. But there's probably ways down the road that are coming.
Yeah, there'll be more controllers coming out, like eventually gloves or like more freehand. There's like the Vive Index, which is finger tracking. You can find out actually picking up something real and then tying that into the system. So I think input is with controller schemes are really going to be.
Yeah, input's kind of the bottleneck right now, but even just practicing again, getting used to the mechanism of it, the motion of it, things like that is probably helpful. And it's once you have the simulation built, you can always add hardware solutions later.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the VR platforms, it's not like games where it's like, okay, now this only works on this Oculus one. They want this stuff to work on everything going forward. So it'll just be changing the controllers and how you do it, but as long as the core stuff works, you can keep upgrading it to be more and more realistic depending on the stuff that comes out.
It's future-proof, it's important for us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering for the, if you can hear me, did you build this for a specific device or is it device agnostic? Can it go in any headset? And either way, did you port it directly into the headsets or do you have a workaround with a management device?
So it's pretty platform agnostic.
Yeah, but it's the kind of thing where if we're going to make a Vive version, you just have to change the controller scheme around, the button layout, and things like that. But it's really built to be used on anything. The only thing would be we're kind of dabbling with the Oculus Quest right now, which is running on more mobile hardware. So that takes a lot of optimization. So that's kind of a little bit more of a heavy lift to support things too. But the PC side of things, yeah, it should be able to run on anything. It just needs to change the button layout around a little bit.
We have time for just one more question while the Wayfair guys are setting up.
I was intrigued when you said. I was intrigued.
With regards to have you run into any hardware issues or anticipate any hardware issues in the future in terms of integrating this into your systems or things that are coming out?
We've run into many hardware issues. Yeah, it's all this stuff's pretty new. Like I'll throw the Oculus Rift S under the bus a little bit. So there's certain headsets that have been out, like the Oculus Rift works very well, it's been out for a while. There's a lot of updates and a lot of changes. So with the Rift S, we'll have weird issues where like the left hand will stop working or they're like buggy issues. In the earlier days, it was the setup, the tracking wasn't good, the kind of primitive tech, but now all the hardware is getting really good. So it's really just software updates, fixable things, but like nothing really catastrophic anymore. It's starting to become more of a well-oiled machine.
Perfect. Yeah, with that, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other questions? We'll be right over there.
Wonderful talk, thank you. I'd like to introduce Dustin, Alex, and Sunny here at Wayfair, and they're going to tell you about their amazing work. Commissioner. Hi.
We're good? Cool. All right, hi guys. I'm Dustin. I'm an iOS developer here at Wayfair, and actually, Sunny and I are both iOS developers, and Alex is one of our full stack developers. And we are on a team here at Wayfair called Envision, and we're actually split across two smaller teams where they're pretty focused in VR, and I'm the only guy here that's focused in AR, but hopefully nobody throws anything at me. So we're gonna kind of split up and talk about different things because we're all a little bit different subject matters, experts. So Alex is gonna start us off here tonight.
Thanks, Dustin. Yeah. Cool. So, like you said, my name is Alex. I work on a sub-team called Room Planner, and as you can imagine from the team name, basically we build visualization tools that help customers visualize the Wayfair furniture they're about to purchase. To give you a better sense of the tools that we have, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the history of how we got to where we are today. So back in 2015, Wayfair released its first planning tool called Favorites List. And basically, while you're shopping on the Wayfair site, if you see things you like, you can hit that heart and it'll save to a list. And you can always go back to it. And so this was Wayfair's first attempt at solving that pain point of getting customers to not hastily make a purchase at any moment, but actually plan out their purchase and take their time. It was great for a year or 2 years. And when we looked at the data of these lists, we noticed that people were actually naming these lists as different room types. So I could create a list called a living room list, and a dining room list, and a bedroom list. And basically what I'm saying is, I want to put all these things in this room that I have. So we had the idea of why don't we actually help the customer visualize this list. So in 2017, we built a feature called Room Planner. And basically what this does is the customer can upload a photo that they take of their room, and they can drag in Wayfair products like stickers and just paste it onto that image. And this was really good in solving the problem of, do these things match the style of my room? Do these products go well together? But there is one glaring weakness, which, as you can imagine, is size. How do I know this rug and this chair is really going to fit in this room that I have? So then, fast forward to 2018, 2019, we built the next iteration, which we call 3D Room Planner. And so this is on the web. And basically, you can first set the room dimensions and then drag in Wayfair furniture into that room. So if you've ever played Sims before, this is very similar to that experience. And so basically, this is a quick recap of the evolution of room planning at Wayfair. First, starting out with just a list of products, then actually visualizing it in a 2D space, and then finally 3D. But then the question lies, where are we going to go next? Could it be something like VR, where you can actually sit in the room that you just created? Or is it something like, augmented reality? I think you'll get the answer soon. But to answer that question, we have to think where are our customers today? So there's only so much information I can show in a presentation like this, but what I can tell you is our traffic as of January 2019 is predominantly mobile. So there's no secret in the industry, people are using their mobile device more often. And what this tells us is we cannot only solve for one platform. Mobile web is extremely important, and of course native app is extremely important. And Wayfair's strategy absolutely is trying to make this yellow slice of mobile web smaller and putting more resources into our iOS and Android apps so that we can take advantage of that mobile traffic. And if you didn't believe in how serious we are with mobile web, One of my teammates actually has a flip phone and opened up 3D Room Planner and it works. It's mind blowing. I couldn't believe it. But more seriously, I'm excited to announce that we released an iOS room planner, 3D room planner, just 2 weeks ago. So you can download on the Wayfair app. You can download the Wayfair app and use Room Planner there as well. And these two screenshots are actually the same room opened across platforms. So this this room was created on the iOS app, and once it was saved, the customer then logs into the web app and can load up the same exact room. So then this brings us to the use case, which a lot of you are probably most interested to hear about, and that is the physical store. So if you haven't heard, Wayfair opened its first brick and mortar retail store last August, or this August. And in the physical store, there is this desk at the back of the store called the Genius Bar, or Home Bar. But it's, yeah, it's like a Genius Bar. It's like a Genius Bar, the Home Bar. And basically, there's like 3 mats where a customer can walk up to it and play around with 3D Room Planner on the mat. And the store consultant can approach them and say, hey, do you need any help with your design? And hopefully they, work together, build a great design for the room they're trying to design. And once they're satisfied with it, they hit a button, and what it will do is cast that room to the VR headset we have in store. And so the room that they just designed with the help of the employee, they can actually just sit in the room and look around in the room. And while they're in the VR headset, the employee can actually edit the room. Like I could say, hey, I want the sofa actually over here, or hey, I want the rug to be, brown instead of red or something. And all of that can happen in real time, which is awesome. And yeah, the store is in the Natick Mall in Natick, Massachusetts. So if you guys are interested, head over there and ask for a demo. They'd be more than happy to show you. So just a sneak peek of what it looks like. But you guys can try it over there. We'll be in the back corner. And just a few screenshots of it. Cool, so this is just one slide to kind of show you the tech stack that we use to make all this possible. So I mentioned we're on web, desktop, and mobile. We use Babylon.js for the 3D engine. Then for our iOS app, using SceneKit. For our Android app that we're currently developing, using SceneForm. And then for the Oculus app, using Unity. But the thing that unites all of these platforms is the 3D model format as well as the backend API. So essentially, a room that you created on one of these platforms could be edited on a different platform and then can be viewed on another platform. That is the vision that we have. And so that any new platforms that come about, we can do the same thing. And the use cases we believe are quite abundant. I spoke about the physical retail use case, but we're also in progress working with our design services program. And that basically what they are is like a group of interior designers that work with Wayfair to actually help customers design their room. So we absolutely see implications with 3D Room Planner. B2B, as well as class-specific experiences. But I'm very excited. If anyone would like to share ideas, I'll be in the back. I'm happy to talk to you. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to talk to you guys today about a product that I built for here, and we're actually going to be launching it next week on mobile for the first time. We like to call it interactive photo, but basically we're trying to use VR solutions to solve a lot of the problems with AR solutions. So right now, when you look into AR, it's great when you have the right environment, when you're in the right place, and when all the lighting and everything is up. So currently in our app, we have what we call View in Room, which allows people to see products in their space in AR to give them size adjustments, like color, like just what Room Planner is doing, like They want to make sure the color works with their place, that the sizing is going to work with where they're wanting to put it. But like this only works under like the best circumstances. So when AR has its drawbacks, if I want to look at something and then sit down and look through some other products and look at something again, I have to go through this scanning process over and over every single time I want to put a chair in the same place, which gets really annoying. There's a long onboarding process for AR, and a lot of it's around like the conditions have to be perfect. So yeah, it's just a huge pain point for our users. Plus location. So some locations aren't the best for AR. More of commuting, less going to the bathroom. But if you want to look at something like on the go, or you want to like try to design something or see something in your space while you're not at your house, there currently isn't a way to do that in AR. You basically are just like, okay, I'll just wait until I get home. So we have come up with an idea of taking AR offline. So you are going to start up an AR, like view an item in your room, and then you basically are going to capture a photo of that scene. So kind of like Room Planner 2D, where you're taking an actual like an image from your space, and then you actually get to put 3D items in that space. So here I'll play your video. Maybe not. Cool. Okay, so this is kind of like our view of room feature. So I'm scanning planes. I'm going to place an object in AR. We get to move our 3D object around, but then we're actually going to capture a photo. And now I have an image, but I can still move this thing around, and everything's going to still stay to scale based on the image. And we can throw in new products. We can swap things out, and then we can also save this, and you can reboot it up later. So we want you to be able to. Currently in AR, like if I'm sitting here doing this for a while, I have to keep standing, keep like working around the room. This lets you capture a space and then go finish it on the couch. Like go sit down, actually relax and design your space. And then you can save all of your photos for later. That way you can interact with more people too. So if like I want to build something, send it to my wife at home, she can look at it as well, move things around and send it back to me. But this just allows for us to have, like if you have one space that you're looking at designing, you get to do that as many times as you want, without having to do the headache of scanning your space and re-initializing that over and over again. But yeah, so everything is still like scaled to the image, so everything is actually still going to be correct based on what you're looking. So that is what I've got.
Hi, I'm Sunny. I'm an iOS developer, like Dustin, on Room Planner. And I'm going to be talking about performance in 3D. So when you're building an experience like Room Planner, you're dealing with a lot of different technologies. And it's sometimes hard to tell which is the best technology to use for a particular solution. Sometimes the choice is easy. Maybe it's like the decisions between like 2D or 3D. But if you're dealing with a 3D space specifically, and you have a high-level API that you're using, like we do on iOS with SceneKit, it's hard to make the decision to be like, let me break away from that for any particular reason. But making those kinds of decisions can have huge impacts on performance. And I'm going to walk through the simple one of the solutions that we had for a seemingly simple problem to bring some user experience to our experience. So basically what we needed to do was be able to stack an item on surfaces that were dynamically placed throughout the room. So there's a lot of parts to this, including where you put those surfaces. So models by themselves don't have any sense of I'm a stackable surface, or this triangle is a stackable surface. And so when you add items to your room, you can rotate them, you can place them in different areas, you can have models that come in different shapes. And so the surfaces come in a variety of patterns, and they can even have different levels, like you have here on the bookcase. So when you're trying to solve for how do I find all of the stackable surfaces inside of a room, it becomes kind of like a more complicated problem, because you don't want to be able to stack on things like the side of the bookcase, or like the side of any of these strange diagonal surfaces as well. And something like this round table doesn't have the same dimensions as a rectangular sort of shelf on there. So being able to dynamically identify where each of these surfaces is a problem. Our original solution was that we had to do a hit test where we would hit test into the scene, hit a geometry, then go up the hierarchy, find if it was parented by something that had a flag that says can it be stacked on. And then from there, find the normal of that triangle and then find the position on the triangle. And you have to do that every time you pan your finger around. So it's quite a complicated set of steps in order to get, in order to run multiple times during a single interaction. So, and very computationally intensive because all of those steps are more or less being done on the CPU again and again. So this presents us with a few problems that we need to handle, especially having things being on the CPU. So our second solution came with identifying a few things and creating this position map. So what we identified was that in our original solution, SceneKit was a technology that wasn't very flexible in terms of offering us the amount of flexibility we needed to access each of these things, each of the dynamically placed surfaces as they came about. So we turned to something called Metal. So Metal on iOS is like OpenGL for many other platforms. And to create this map, we used OpenGL to re-render the scene and only render surfaces that had faces pointing in the up normal direction, and then the color of those specific pixels on this map to XYZ coordinates. So why did we decide to do this? Well, we had to identify a few things. Some of the things that we had to identify were that the item that you're trying to drag around, all the items outside of that item and the floor all stay in place while you're trying to pan that item around. On top of that, the extents of the room don't change while you are panning an item. And there's a few different stages that you have available to you when you're panning, which include when you begin panning, which only happens one time. When you update a pan, so when you move your finger around while you've already started panning, that happens multiple times. At this stage, this was happening many, like hundreds, even thousands of times if a user is panning an item around. And this could eat up a lot of computational resources pretty quickly. And then we have the end, of course, when you stop panning. So what we've done is instead of having to dynamically locate each of these hit tests and then run the hierarchy and do the normals and all that stuff I just talked about, we sort of offloaded that task onto the GPU using Metal. And so we could massively parallelize that task because basically all the information you need in order to see where all the potential positions for stacking are is available to you when you start panning. And so that's something you need to identify early on, that information is already available to you when you start panning, and to formalize it into this map is something you want to do one time. So we render this map when you begin panning, and then from there, instead of doing those hit tests again and again, we only read the pixel value at that pixel where your finger is in the iOS app. And then that pixel value is each of the RGB values, so like red, green, blue, is a value from 0 to 1. And if you think about it, an RGB value is just like a vector. It's 3 values together, and so is an XYZ value. So if you were able to multiply the 0 to 1 value between RGB by the extents of the room, as I explained, which stays constant, then you don't actually need to do all of that hit testing. So we removed all the hit testing in the update phase, and then did only one single hit test in the end phase. So this made it a pretty performant solution. It took it from what was originally a solution that took 1.4 milliseconds every time the user moved their finger, to a solution that only took 0.07 milliseconds, so a 20x increase in performance. That was pretty significant for us and a really exciting thing for us to work on. But more so, it was just something that we could understand to be like a way to look at the same technologies we've been using and say, is this technology helping me at this current point, as our high-level API was for SceneKit, or is it kind of getting in the way? And then being able to, at that point, identify all of those things that we have access to, like the panning function or all the stackable surfaces being already in the scene at the point where the panning begins, and all the potential stacking positions already being where they would be at that point. So understanding those and then kind of saying, well, how can I offload that high-level solution to a more like low-level solution with metal, and then moving that CPU like serial task onto the GPU and massively parallelize that task to get 20x improvement. So that was just something exciting we're working on, and happy to share it with you guys. Yeah.
Cool. So basically, this is like our team's still growing. So if you guys want to build cool stuff in 3D and want to join Wayfair, here's an email for a recruiter, or you guys can talk with us. And if you guys have questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah. Questions? No? Here you go.
Great presentation, thank you. And looks like the Wayfair is going high-tech in many different ways, which is great. My question is, you deal with many different clientele and they have very different perspective on different things. So is there any 508 compliance issues when you create these kinds of applications? And what is this load that you're talking about, GPU versus CPU? So if you're doing everything in real time, XR versus the other applications that you're looking at, what are those choices? So these are two different questions, but I just wanted to add that and understand some of the choices that you make in terms of minimizing the real time, computational load in order to get the task done. And also, how do you handle the variability of the people with different kinds of 508 issues, like the accessibility? Thank you.
Yeah. So in terms of accessibility, you're talking about the VR application. Yeah, I think that is a topic that we've discussed, but we haven't scaled on because of the nature of the scale of our current VR. Like, we have one physical store that's open, we have one headset there. As we run into more use cases and we want to first gauge the success of whether VR is going to be something in our long-term future, in the physical store specifically, then we can kind of assess and be like, yes, this is extremely important.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll talk to you about the CPU versus GPU type problems. Basically, you need to set like a benchmark for yourself. If you're going to run like 60 frames a second on an iPhone, that's going to be 16.5-ish milliseconds and 2/3 milliseconds. So if, like with this problem, establishing that baseline was really important because it let us identify which things we should be targeting. So if something's taking 1.5 milliseconds, that's like 10% of all of the potential processing load that we have, right? Or capacity. So citing that first and being like, how can we solve for this better is something that we like try to do with metal. There's often tasks where you just, like recently we handled a project where we were tackling like cutouts for windows and things like that. And so like we had a few different solutions for those. And so being able to just be open about like, hey, where are the downfalls of a particular solution, and be honest about where those are, is probably more important than any of the like the technical details. I would say, like, of course, I'm going to be a proponent for metal because I just like used it for a few things that I worked on, but being able to communicate with your team and say like, hey, like this is like really important to us. I think we want to be able to bring down this particular amount of computational resource that we're sending out, just because maybe we have another thing that we want to bring in. So like if now that we have the extra capacity because of the stacking thing that we have implemented, we can now bring in some other things, like any other new things that we're going to work on. Probably shouldn't say what they are.
Yeah, so when it comes to performance like that, we at Wayfair, we have to look at that pretty heavily, because we have to look at our user base. Like, we're not a tech company. So not everybody that uses our app is going to have the latest devices. A lot of our users are going to have a lot of the older devices, and we have to try to support as many as we can. So us saying 60 frames a second on a brand new iPad, and like that's our benchmark, is kind of sad. We should be doing 60 frames a second on like an iPhone 6 that's several years old, because that's what our user base is going to have.
But most of your computation is on the server side?
No, so on our apps, everything's being done locally. Yeah, it's being done on device, and then with web, it's also being done on the device. The stuff that I was talking about, our server was more just like that we have kind of built our backend to be pretty much written down into nothing but just like vector points, so that we can regenerate scenes on any platform just using vector points.
Client agnostic.
Client agnostic, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, questions? Anybody else?
Another question.
Oh,
like I was like curious about like the how you got like working on like manual, and how you might be challenging to say implement the solution on any other like graphical API, say like OpenGL when you're like working on Oculus, or maybe some sort of other APIs for like Android or something, or
Sure.
like if there's any sort of hurdle when approaching the those implementations.
Sure. Well, I'll start with Metal. So basically, when we were deciding to use Metal for our specific use case, it was easy to implement because SceneKit had a way to sort of inject it into where it needed to go. When we're deciding about those kinds of things, when it comes to like OpenGL or the other platforms, when it comes to like a high level API thing, we have to all kind of like come together as a group and decide like what is going to be our standard for going forward, because we're all going to have to try and use that, and like whatever we decide to document and stuff like that is going to be like read by everyone else on the team. But in terms of like technical standpoint, in terms of implementing it, Metal is more or less just based on OpenGL, and it's just math really. And so when we're able to implement things through Metal, that kind of almost directly translates over to OpenGL, and bar a few like things that OpenGL has that Metal doesn't, like tessellation shaders and geometry shaders, but we're not really using those at this point. So like for the most part, just being able to like tell it where the vertices go using the vertex shader, and then like the fragment shader is more than enough for us at this point. Yeah, so those are just math.
Yeah.
We can do one more question while I.
Oh, yeah.
Pass this over. Just I'll pass this down if you want to ask one more question.
Yeah, I think there was one in the back. Yeah. But also a point on that, so like we chose to do it in Metal. So like when so iOS was the first platform where we actually ran into an issue when it came to stacking. On desktop has had stacking for a while, and it's just like the first time that we actually ran into an issue with performance was on mobile devices. So that's when we came into like needing a solution. We happened to choose Metal because it was like we have a more robust iOS team than we do Android team. So we generally do proof of concepts on our iOS team, and then transfer the knowledge over to our Android team to build something out. So that's kind of why we made those decisions.
So,
sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just I was thinking of like false negatives, right? Like if is it possible for someone to design a room with the furniture there, and based on that simulation, they actually think it's not right for me, right? When perhaps if they bought it and they had it in their room, then they have had a different understanding of that. So I'm wondering, like in your testing and your surveys, like what other variables or factors do you wish that in the future you'll be able to sort of offer that as an option to minimize that potential risk of a customer playing with it and realizing it's not for me, when it could have been something that could have been adjusted, right, differently when they're going through that.
Yeah, so the reason we're called like Team Envision is because our big like problem that we're trying to solve is instantiating confidence in a purchase. So it's more or less like if somebody gets deterred from a purchase, we're actually okay with that, because we're actually trying to prevent people from returning something that they didn't want, because that's where our company really would lose money, is on a return, not on like an initial. If somebody didn't buy something, that means they're probably going to buy something else, which hopefully is still with us, but at least we're not losing money on the fact that they bought it and then returned it. So really like the design around what we do is trying to instill confidence in that initial purchase. And if we do steer people away from some decisions, that's actually like part of what we're trying to do.
And yeah, I'll just add two quick things. I think to go off what he said, we definitely want to recommend new products if there is a reason for a customer not, being satisfied with a current thing that's in their room planner, for example. So making sure we understand why it is that they recommended is something that we're working on, like whether it's getting a sense of maybe it doesn't match their style, or maybe it doesn't actually fit in the room or fit in whatever place they're putting it in. So understanding why. And then the second thing is, our presentation, we have like a suite of tools, and the vision is to not only have cross-platform, but also ease of cross-application. So someone could be looking for a couch, and we can actually recommend interactive photo as opposed to room planner. So knowing what feature to present to the customer is something that we would like to work on.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, so we're going to stick around for another hour approximately for more demos. The people at Look On are over there in that corner. The talk you just heard, the gentleman will be in that corner doing a demonstration in their Oculus Quest and with their tablets. Wait a minute, what's going on with my, oh, I'm already I'm back at the beginning, oh my God. Let's see, how do I do this? I'll just zip through it, why not? Yeah. And, oops, overdid it. Okay, so, and then we're going to go drinking. So, so if any of you want to help us manage our events, I'd like to thank Jerry Bai for filming and helping put this together. For Elma, who works here at Wayfair, she's been a friend of BostonVR. She really ran her tail off getting this to happen. So, and I'm Jeffrey Jacobson, and thank you all for coming.
Go drinking water.
Oh, I forgot that.